Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to talk about some terminology and how the wrists move and how those wrist movements affect different parts of the golf club and the golf swing. Okay, so let's go over some basic terms everybody needs to know. Flexion in the left wrist, extension in the left wrist. I turn my hand this way, flexion, extension, okay? Radial, thumb points towards your face. Ulnar, thumb points down to the ground. Sideways, still radial, ulnar, okay? Things we probably need to get a little better understanding of. It's not necessary for everybody in the world, first of all, to get the club shaft parallel to the ground at the top and still hit it reasonably far. For your average golfers who don't play golf for a living, which is most people in the world, the attempt to get the golf shaft parallel to the ground at the top tends to create a movement of the wrist too much towards radial, okay? And also for a lot of golfers, then they start to separate the elbows apart, generally creating a lot of issues that have to be accommodated in the downswing. If we go back to the idea of increasing radial, which is again in this direction towards me, when you start to increase radial, okay, you start to increase flexion in the wrist. Talking about lead wrist, when you increase radial, you start to increase, extension. Radial, extension. As you increase the extension, start to open the club face more, right? So that's the sacrifice. If you don't have an innate ability, a huge amount of talent, or a tremendous dedication to practice, and you start to increase the radial, increase the extension, opening the club face, and don't have the necessary means to get out of that situation, you're probably going to deliver the club too open with too much loft, okay? And then your body will slow down, your pivot will stop early, you might early extend, you might start casting, you might start bottoming out, you might start chicken winging, everything we see in a lot of not so good golf swings. So the brain is always trying to react to this club face and get it oriented closely to where it needs to be at impact. Large effect on that, how you manage your wrist, okay? So more increased radial, in general terms, the more increased extension of the left wrist. Vice versa, if I go more into ulnar, it tends to put more flexion in the left wrist, which is a more de-lofting effect on the club and a more squaring effect on the club face, okay? So those are your basic terms, just different ways to look at it. I'm not really going to talk about pronation, supination, because in my opinion, that's not wrist, that's arm movement, okay? So we've talked about radial, talked about ulnar, we talked about flexion and extension. We're starting to have a better understanding of how those complement each other, right? It's pretty difficult unless you have an unusual grip that you could go into radial, which is again towards me, and not have, especially as you get towards max radial, not have a movement of the lead wrist into extension, which is opening the face. There are some very rare people who can move their wrist in certain ways that are different, but that's a general rule, okay? So the question came in after a lesson. We were talking about trying to get this player less radial at the top, less elbows separated, less narrowness of the club from the target line at the top. We wanted to get the golf club into a more depth dimension, okay? More depth instead of this is not depth. And we want to get the club face stronger, less open. So he was curious if it was okay to not have such a large wrist set, okay, which means radial, sorry. I said, absolutely. Again, we're not all designed or needing to have club shaft parallel to the top and make those sacrifices if our bodies have to make those, which is increase in loft, opening the club face, etc. Absolutely, it's certainly fine for a lot of players to get club more into depth, more into flexion of the lead wrist, and not have to worry about do I need to then go there, because that will be defeating the whole purpose of that player's attempt to create depth in a square club face if we were good here and then the last moment we just turned it into extension and more radial, opening the club face, etc. Okay, so hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, let us know, give us a like, and we'll see you soon.